What is good, Raider Nation, man? Today I got us an interesting video, and it's gonna be on the topic of how can we fix our interior pass rush? Who can we try and bring in? Who can we try and trade for? Um, let's get into it. So, as we all know, we've been in trade talks with the Washington football team for our backup quarterback Marcus Mariota, and I think this links perfectly with what a guy that I want to bring in, and let's talk about it, man. So, as we all know, the Washington football team has no quarterback. They did just give their guy that they played in the playoffs with I think it was a 3-year contract, kind of like a backup role, but can prove to be a starter role. But as you all know, they've been interested in Marcus Mariota, as other teams have been as well. But we're talking about a trade. So what I think we should do with the Washington football team, we all seen that defense. We all seen how dominant that front seven was for the Washington football team, and that's what carried them into the playoffs for that last stretch of games. And that's what we needed, right? We were able to get by in the first half of the season with our offense being explosive and our defense still being bad, but we weren't figured out yet. But second half of the season, when teams started really trying to figure us out, then our defense had to step up, and we had no defense to step up for the offense. So I think with the trade that we should try and propose to the Washington football team is we have to give up Marcus Mariota and a third or a fourth round pick for defensive tackle Matt Ionitis from the Washington football team. He has an extremely team-friendly contract. He's a big guy. He plugs the run holes with ease, and he is an extremely good pass rusher when it comes to power. He drives this guy back consistently. He even has he played some DN in college, so he is really good with his hands. And he's a guy that he was a 5th round pick, and you have a defensive line full of 1st round picks on that Washington football team. So he's kind of buried in a depth chart down there. And he did get a contract extension last year. But this is what I think we should do. Marcus Mariota, 3rd or 4th round pick, and they give us Matt Ioannidis and maybe a late round pick, like a 6th, maybe a 5th. Let's take a look at Matt Ioannidis' contract and stats, man. So the reason why I really like Matt Ioannidis, he can pass rush and he can run stop. He could do it. He's good. He does it both. I was taking a look back when the year he was drafted. At the time, Mayock was still one of the guys that was doing the draft commentary, and Mayock has some good words to say about this guy. He specifically said that when he got drafted in the 5th round, he said, "This is a guy that I feel like in any other draft class gets taken in the earlier rounds, late 1st, maybe late 2nd. He doesn't go into the 3rd." And he got picked in the 5th round. So, we all trust Mayock and what he says. So if Mayock thinks that this is a 2nd round guy at the time and was getting picked in the 5th, so Matt Ioannidis, he got a contract extension, and the reason why I really like him is because we're getting rid of $11 million in Mariota, getting rid of him. We're only getting rid of a 4th round or maybe a 5th round pick, maybe a 3rd if that's what needs to go through for the trade, for a guy who has an extremely team-friendly contract for 3 years. We get him for 3 years, and then after that, he'll hit the wrong side of 30. He'll be in the offseason of his last year. He'll hit 30, so it'll be tough to re-sign him. But let's take a look at his contract, man. So we're looking at all these free agents. Leonard Williams, a guy who I don't think is even going to be available. And then you look at Tomlinson, Davin Tomlinson. You now have J.J. Watt, Kawan Short, who I was taking a look at his contract, and he was getting paid $16 million. So I'm not really too. I like what Kawan Short has done in the past. He is an extremely good pass rushing defensive tackle, but he's just been plagued by injuries. But let's get into Matt Ioannidis. So next year in 2021, for his season, it's only gonna be 6.9 million in cap. I take that. 6.9 million in cap for a defensive tackle that's an immediate upgrade to what we have, who can pass rush and run stop, who was a big, large DN in college, a 3-4 DN in college. Then the year after that, it's only 8 million. And then after that, in 2023, he is a free agent. So we're talking about a guy who's going to be on our team who's really only going to be asking for 7 million a year, and he's an immediate upgrade to what we have. He's an extremely underrated run stopper, but he is a big presence in that pass rush in those third down situations. In the first down situations, let's say they get a penalty, he is really good at getting after the passer. And he's a guy who really went under the radar with the Washington football team because, like I said, they have Montez Sweat, Chase Young, first rounders. They have Daron Payne, and then they have Jonathan Allen, who are both younger than him by 2 years, which is probably why they're giving them more play time. But they're first round picks, so they feel the need that they have to put those guys out on the field more. But I mean, you look at his contract, very team friendly. It's about 10 million less than what these other guys are going to be asking for in free agency. Davin Tomlinson is probably going to want 13 million. So we're talking about this is a $6 million he's on a $6 million discount for a guy who I think produces better. You look at JJ Watt, he's gonna want 16 to 19 million, $11 million less. Then you're gonna look at a guy like Kawan Short, probably gonna want another $15 million, basically another $10 million less. Now, you're hearing me talk about the money. Let's talk about his stats, man. Okay. So in his first year as at the time was a Washington Redskin, he didn't start in any games that year, and he only played 10 games. They didn't start him at all, and he didn't have any sacks because, well, he just didn't start. He played a role where they didn't think that he was going to emerge into a good player because he was a 5th-round guy. They just played him as a rotational kind of a rotational down kind of guy. So you look at in 2017, where they had an injury on that defensive line, and he was forced to come up in the depth chart. The year before, he only played 10 games, 0 starts. His best stats was 8 tackles. 2017, where he was forced into a role because those injuries, his first year, he's only started 10 games out of the 16. And he had 4.5 sacks at defensive tackle. He had 4.5 sacks at defensive tackle, 14 assisted tackles, 27 total tackles, and 13 solo tackles. And that's with only starting 10 games as a defensive tackle. That is better than every single one of our guys. You look into the year after that, 2018, he only starts 9 games. So he started less games. But look at this. He starts 9 games. Skyrockets, 7.5 sacks at defensive tackle. You tell me if we had a guy that can bring that kind of pressure at defensive tackle, get 7.5 sacks from a position where he's getting double teamed, I would take that. Then you look into the year after that. He then becomes a full-time starter, plays all 16 games, gets 8.5 sacks from the position of defensive tackle with 64 tackles, 42 solo tackles, and 22 assisted tackles. He had 16 quarterback hits that year along with his 8.5 sacks. This guy is just going up and up and up as they give him more play time. If he were to be on the Raiders, he would be a starter. He would get that full-time role. And if you're talking about a guy in his first year starting all 16 games, he had 8.5 sacks. They finally gave him a chance, and he had 8.5 sacks. Then you look at this last season. He got hurt at the beginning of the year. He only played 3 games, didn't start any of them because they have Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Chase Young, Montez Sweat buried in that depth chart. He only played 3 games, didn't start, got hurt in the 3rd game, but he still had a sack and a half in 3 games. You're talking about a guy who didn't even start, got hurt in the beginning of his third game. So let's say he only played 2.5 games, but had 1.5 sacks in the beginning of the season, and he was barely even playing. In the beginning of the season, he had 1.5 sacks. Again, he only played 2.5 games. He had 7 tackles, and he still had 2 pressures and 2 quarterback hits. I really like this guy. He's a guy that's buried in the depth chart of the Washington football team, and in our team, he would be our #1 defensive tackle. So you're talking about passing downs and passing situations where we know, let's say our defense gets a good stop for once on 2nd down. We get a tackle for loss. Let's say 3rd and 13, 3rd and 12. This is what with this guy in. This is what our defensive line could look like. We're talking about specifically passing downs. I honestly think we're a team that's going to bring back Takk McKinley. So on pass rushing downs, our defensive line is going to look like Max Crosby at left end, Matt Ionitis at DT1. Then you bump in Cleve Furl for the pass rushing downs at DT2. Then you have Takk McKinley as our right end on pass rushing downs. That's an extremely quick defensive line right there to get after the quarterback on downs that we know they're not going to run. I think Matt Ionitis is a great fit. I mean, you look at, he's a guy that with opportunity, he excelled in every single chance he got. No starts, he didn't put up any numbers. He finally got some action, put up almost 5 sacks in only 10 games that he started. Then he finally got some more action. He played 14 games, got 7.5 sacks. Then he played all 16 games, got 8.5 sacks. Then in this last year where he got hurt, he still had a 1.5 sacks. I mean, he's coming off an injury. That's why I do feel like he could be coming our way if we were to try and go after him, which sadly I feel like he's a name that just nobody talks about because he's forgotten, man. You look at the success of that defense over there in Washington. He wasn't part of it because he couldn't be. He was let's say the year before that, 8.5 sacks. That was more than their left end Montez Sweat 1st-round pick. And he was playing defensive tackle. He found a way to shine in that Redskins team at the time. They didn't have a defense. Then to start this year, he was already doing good, already gaining more progress, already had a 1.5 sacks in 2 games. Then he got hurt in his 3rd. I really think that this is a guy that if we can put a package together for Mariota and a 3rd, 4th, maybe a 5th if they would take that, you have to look at a guy you have to look for a guy like Matt Ionitis, man, an under the radar kind of guy. And I'm telling you, he's putting up his career stats are 22 sacks in basically 3 years. The first year he didn't play. The last year he only played 2 games, got hurt in his 3rd. So let's say 20 sacks in 3 years. That's, as a defensive tackle, that's great. We're talking about Crosby in 2 years has 16. Let's see, but that's a pass rusher. Max Crosby is a left, and his job is pass rushing. His job is to plug up holes and then pass rush, and he has 20 sacks in 3 years. I think if we have to try and make a push for him. I know that we're linked to the other big names like Davin Tomlinson, who I'm not really high on. And matter of fact, let's talk about Davin Tomlinson really, really quick. His first 2 years as a Giant, he didn't do anything. He had one sack in 2 years. He only had 1 tackle for loss his first year. And he started 32 games. We're talking about he went 32 games his first 2 years with 1 sack. He started every single game with 1 sack. 32 games. Then they bring in Leonard Williams. And this is why I think that Davin Tomlinson is a guy who only excelled because of Leonard Williams. You have Leonard Williams in 2019, frees him up, and then he starts getting 3.5 sacks. I mean, it's not impressive, especially for a team needy, a needy team of a pass rushing defensive tackle. We need that. We need that badly. And we're talking about a guy now who played 48 games and is on 4.5 sacks. I don't like that. Then you have a guy who now has played 64 games and is on 8 sacks. And you look at the numbers, he had 3.5 sacks both years with Leonard Williams. Without Leonard Williams, he had 1 sack in 32 games. I don't think that Davin Tomlinson is a guy that we actually should even pursue. There's other guys. I mean, if you're gonna want to pay Davin Tomlinson 12 to 13 million, just go out and try and get J.J. Watt then. J.J. Watt would do better than that. He might be hurt, but he'll put up 6 sacks before he gets hurt. Like, I don't think Davin Tomlinson is a good player that we should go after in free agency. I think that Kawan Short is a better guy, better fit for us for what we need. But the guy that I really like that I just talked about is Matt Ionitis. Really try and go check him out after this video, man. He's a beast, dude. He can really rush the quarterback, and he makes it look easy at times with his bull rush. Just completely puts the lineman in the lap of the quarterback, man. He's a beast. Like I said, Matt Ionitis, his contract is extremely team friendly, only asking for $7 million a year, and is putting up 22 sacks at defensive tackle in 3 years. I think that that's a no-brainer. We should go after that 100%. I don't think that it's some sort of like mysterious thing. I think it's pretty obvious. He obviously is known by Mayock for the simple fact that Mayock was doing his draft coverage at the time when he came out. He is 26, going on to 27. His contract ends in 2023, so we do have him for a couple of years. And I mean, you look at a guy that he got his contract in 2019. That was his best year at 8.5 sacks, and they only paid him $7 million a year. I think you have to go after that, especially if he's gonna be consistently. Once his role and reps started getting consistent, putting up 7.5 plus sacks. When he didn't have a chance, he couldn't produce. He's gonna be our number 1 guy. He's gonna get number 1 snaps. I think Matt Ionitis is a must pick up. At least you have to try to go after him. If they ask for a 1st-round pick for Matt Ionitis, I mean, the only thing is I would not give up a 1st-round pick just for his age. If it was a 2nd round, I'd say maybe a 3rd, 100%. I'll trade a 3rd, give him Mariota too. He's an extremely friendly team, contract friendly. I think you should really try and go pick him up. Let me know who you guys think we should pick up, and really look at people that we should trade for, because 1st-round picks, you know, if we were to trade a 1st-round pick for a defensive tackle, I'd be okay with it. That just means that you go out and re-sign Nicholas Morrow, because if we have a 1st-round pick, I think our best choice is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But if I'm fine with giving up that pick for a defensive tackle that we need. So, yeah, man. Let me know what you guys think of Matt Ionitis. If you guys go check him out, let me know if you guys are on the same page with me as giving up a 3rd-round pick and Mariota for him. I'd do it in a heartbeat. Let me know in the comments down below what else I should do. And, yeah, man, let me know how to improve. And that'll be it for today. Thank you.